And this statue right here, this man right here, is King Kamehameha I. So this guy, the reason he's significant, and there's a reason there's a statue of him out here, is because this guy united all the Hawaiian Islands before the missionaries came here. This guy was smart, he was opportunistic, and he was kind of a badass. So back in the day, Hawaiians, before missionaries, before Hawaii was colonized, there were used to traders coming in and trading with the Hawaiian people. Ships would come by, individual ships would come by from like Britain and like Spain and stuff like that, and they would trade with the locals, and they would kind of rip them off, right? They would give them like a handful of metal nails for like a whole bunch of livestock or like a bunch of stuff like that. And that has to do with the way the Hawaiian Islands were united, because one day there's a ship captained by this guy Simon Metcalf, and there's a Metcalf Street around here. And so Simon Metcalf is trading with the Chief of Maui, which is another island. That's actually the island where I grew up. I was born in this island, I grew up on Maui. And it's just a popular trading spot, a town called Lahaina. It's still there, it's a big tourist hotspot. And he pulls up to there, and he trades with the current Chief of Maui, and they had some kind of bad interaction. And according to Wikipedia, Simon Metcalf, the captain of the ship, he like whipped the chief on the side of his cheek or something with a rope from his ship. And don't seem like much, but like, if you think of, well, first of all, ropes in the 1800s, and then ropes that are used on ships, they're not soft, you know what I'm saying? They got spines and all kind of shit sticking out. So anyway, they had that little altercation, and at some point, there was like a smaller ship that was tied to the ship that Simon Metcalf was the captain of. And this small ship disappears one day. And Simon Metcalf gets the word that that the locals took it, local Hawaiians took it. And so he goes over to a town on Maui called Oluwalo. And I guess he heard rumors that that's what happened to the ship. So he goes to Oluwalo, and he confirms that the ship was stolen, the ship was taken there, the locals smashed the ship, and they killed the one crew member. So in response, Simon Metcalf pulls up to Oluwalo, and he pushes all the cannons on his ship to one side of the ship. And he does his trading call, and all the Hawaiian people come out. They bring their canoes, they get into range of the ship, and he fucking fires. And he kills over 100 people in response. And that's known as the Oluwalo Massacre. And 100 people may not seem like a lot, right, compared to today, maybe, today's standards of war. But if you think about it, again, this is, we're talking like the late 1700s. And they didn't have machine guns. They didn't have automatic weapons. They had cannons and muskets. And how long do you think it takes to reload a cannon and a musket? Probably takes a while, right? Now think about how long it might take to kill 100 people doing that. So what that tells you is it was very deliberate, and homie wanted to cause some damage. I'm gonna head down this way. So this happens. He does the Oluwalo Massacre, right? Simon Metcalf. So in response, the current chief of Hawaii, he says, all right, this is like 6 weeks later, he says, the next foreign ship that comes around, I'm gonna take that shit over. So the ship comes around, 2 ships actually come around, right? The first one, 2 ships were in the area at the time. So there's the one that Simon Metcalf was captaining, and then, so that one is somewhere in the Big Island right now, and then there's another one that his son is captaining. So that ship makes the mistake of coming close to Hawaii Island. So King Kamehameha, the guy who had the statue back that way, and the guy who ends up uniting the Hawaiian Islands, him and his crew, because he's part of the royal court at this time, and he's the keeper of the god Ku, which is the god of war. So he's a badass. And he goes out there to that ship and he captures the ship and he kills everyone on board, including Simon Metcalf's son. The reason he went on there is because he thought Simon Metcalf was on there. Found his son instead. He kills everyone on board except for one man, a guy named Isaac Davis. And that's where the Wikipedia article kind of ended, but putting myself in the shoes of this guy, Isaac Davis, one day you're on your ship, you're a fur trader, chilling in Hawaii, all of a sudden the locals board your ship and they kill everyone, including your captain. Now, why would they spare his life? Right? Like, what did he have to offer them? He was just another white guy to them, right? So that makes me wonder, either he knew how to communicate with them to some capacity. Oh shit, you can see the gimbal in the shot, my bad. He knew how to communicate with them in some capacity, or he knew how to tell them, yo, like, I have something of value, right? So keeping that in mind, King Kamehameha takes this guy, takes him back to the Big Island, and at the same time, the original ship that Simon Metcalf was on, the guy who did the Oluwalo Massacre, he's offshore somewhere, and what is it called? Boatswain, which I think the common term is like petty officer. So the petty officer of his ship takes a smaller vessel and goes out to somewhere on a big island, one of the villages. So the people in that village, they capture him as well. And they take the small ship that he had and a few cannons that were on it. So that guy's name was John Young. And there's also a Young Street around here, not too far. So now King Kamehameha has two essentially white guys on his team. He has Isaac Davis and John Young. And rather than make them prisoners, what he does instead is he makes them chiefs. He gives them land and gives them wives. And they end up staying here in Hawaii. So fast forward a little bit. I don't know exactly how long. But King Kamehameha, and keep in mind the islands are not united at this time. King Kamehameha discovers that the Chief of Maui is away. I believe the Chief of Maui was on this island for a little bit. And so, he rolls up with his ship full of newly stolen cannons and muskets, and his two white guys who, it was not stated specifically, but I believe what they must have offered him was, modern war tactics, right? Modern ship war tactics, how to fight a war with cannons and muskets. And that's exactly what King Kamehameha did. So I'm from Maui, right? And there's this place called Iao Valley, and it's like a big, well, not big, but it's a nice little nature area. It's kind of in the middle of town. And we were taught when I was a kid, because there's this big river, the Iao River, and we were taught about the Battle of Keppaniwai. And that is, should I go this way or that way? Let's go this way. Battle of Keppaniwai. So that's where he took over Maui. And we were taught that the battle was so bloody, it was kind of like a 300 situation. Have you ever seen the movie 300? How they had like a tiny little cliff and they were holding back all those soldiers with just 300 dudes. So it was a similar situation, except it was the reverse. It was King Kamehameha and a small number of dudes, and they managed to defeat his entire army, essentially, using the cannons and the guns that they got. And we were taught that the battle was so bloody that the Iao River ran red with the blood of the soldiers. Well, the blood of everyone involved, I should say. So that's how he took over the island of Maui. Then he moved on to this island, not too long after that. So this chief in Oahu, he had some kind of warning. And what he did was he went up to the mountain and he dug holes in the side of the mountain. And he had cannons of his own. And he dug holes in the side of the mountain and he put these cannons in the mountain. And that gave him a little bit of an advantage against King Kamehameha. But King Kamehameha was smart enough to send dudes around the side of the mountain, climb him up there, take him out. That's exactly what he did. After a bloody battle, he takes over the island of Oahu. So by this time, word gets around to the chief of the island of Kauai, which is the second to the last one up the island chain. And it was the third, maybe most populous island. So essentially, this was kind of the last one that King Kamehameha needed to conquer in order to unite the islands. And word of how it went down must have traveled, because they negotiated the sort of capture of that island non-violently. So they made like a pact with the chief. They let him live, and he now had the island of Kauai under his rule. Hawaiians, when they captured the chief, the opposing chief, typically they would sacrifice him to the god Ku, the god of war. And this is what some of the ali'i under King Kamehameha wanted to do. Ali'i being like the chiefs, the warriors, right? His main homies, right? And half of them wanted to kill the guy and sacrifice him. But King Kamehameha and Isaac Davis and John Young, they were telling King Kamehameha not to do that. I don't exactly know the reasoning. So King Kamehameha decides, okay, let's not kill him. Let's keep him alive. And the ali'i who disagree with him, apparently they plot to poison the chief. And word gets around to Isaac Davis, and he warns this chief. And so the chief leaves the island, and the ali'i end up poisoning Isaac Davis instead. And that's how he meets his end. And now I'm kind of drawing a blank. Anyway, from that point forward, the islands were united under one, kingdom. And things essentially stayed that way for the rest of King Kamehameha's life. And yeah, that was the new way of life. And it wasn't until like the year after Kamehameha died that missionaries finally came over here. And that kind of marked the beginning of what you see before you, which is high rises, concrete, commerce, people in khakis and aloha shirts. You know what I'm saying? Business, serious business. That's what we got going on here. And that's how you get to modern day Hawaii. And now, I don't know where to go.